Okay, welcome everyone to this deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are unpacking something pretty fundamental, I think. Something from the sources you share that could really shift how you think about building wealth. We're talking about the millionaire mindset.
That's right. And the core idea running through this stuff is, well, it's fascinating. It suggests it's not really about how much money people make.
Right, not primarily anyway.
Yeah, it's deeper. It's about how their brain is actually wired,
Yeah.
how they process financial decisions. The average millionaire, according to this material, thinks fundamentally differently about money than, say, 95% of people.
95%. That's a huge difference. So our goal today, our mission, is to really dig into what those differences are. We're focusing on 5 specific thought patterns, these kind of core mental models that the sources point to.
Exactly. And the really exciting thing, the actionable bit here, is that these patterns, well, they're not fixed. You're not born with them. They can be understood and, crucially, adopted. Anyone can practice them. Doesn't matter where you're starting from financially. Understanding them is sort of the first step to maybe rewiring your own thinking.
Okay, let's get straight into it then. What are these 5 patterns, and how do they really contrast with what we might call average thinking? Where do we kick off?
Well, probably the most foundational shift that comes up again and again is moving from scarcity thinking towards abundance thinking.
Yeah, scarcity versus abundance. The sources paint average thinking here as seeing money like a fixed pie.
Exactly. A limited resource.
If someone else gets a bigger slice, mine has to be smaller. That whole "there's only so much to go around" idea.
Precisely. And the consequences of thinking that way, they're incredibly limiting. The sources talk about how it creates anxiety around money. It can lead to hoarding behaviors because you're just terrified of running out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes people miss opportunities because they're too scared to let go of what they have. And, ultimately, decisions get driven by fear. Fear of loss, fear of not having enough. You end up seeing other people's success as kind of threatening.
Right, because in that model, their success means less for you. So how does the abundance mindset flip that? What does that look like?
Well, instead of that fixed pie, they see money more like a river.
Yeah.
A constantly flowing stream. It's an abundant resource that isn't just out there to be grabbed, but something that can actually be created.
Created? How?
Through value exchange. You create value for other people, and value flows back to you. It's not a zero-sum game.
And that shift, just that basic belief, changes how you act, doesn't it? If you believe money can be created, you start looking for ways to create value, not just protect the little bit you think you have.
Absolutely. The whole focus shifts.
Yeah.
It goes from playing defense to playing offense. You're looking for opportunities. You're more willing to take calculated risks, especially ones with asymmetric returns,
Yeah.
meaning the potential upside is way bigger than the potential downside. And crucially, you celebrate and learn from other people's success. If they built wealth, you think, okay, how did they do that? What can I learn? Decisions come from possibility, not just constraint.
The Warren Buffett example during market crashes really nails this, doesn't it? Everyone else is panicking, seeing scarcity, selling low.
Fear takes over.
But he's calm. He sees the long-term value others are missing because of that short-term fear. He's buying when things are cheap, seeing abundance, really, where others see disaster.
And this highlights a really key shift in the questions people ask themselves. The default might be, can I afford this? Just checking the bank balance now.
Right.
But the abundance mindset asks, okay, how can I afford this? It becomes a question of strategy, of resourcefulness. And similarly, instead of why can't I do that, it becomes how can I do that? It's about finding a way.
That reframing is powerful just on its own. Okay, so if abundance is the foundation, what's pillar number 2?
It's all about your time horizon, thinking in decades, not days.
And this one feels really visible in everyday life, Average thinking seems so often geared towards immediate gratification. What feels good right now?
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the results everywhere, right? It's financing the flashy car because you want that feeling today, even though you know it's losing value the second you drive it off the lot. It's chasing that hot stock tip or, the latest crypto thing, hoping for a quick win instead of building something solid. It's basically choosing short-term comfort over long-term gain.
So the millionaire mindset flips that to focus on long-term compounding. What creates the most value over years and decades?
Exactly. They're thinking about investing in things that appreciate, businesses, real estate, skills, knowledge, things that grow over time. They're building systems designed for consistent results, even if it's slow at first. They accept that short-term bumps or discomfort are just part of the deal for that long-term growth.
The Amazon IPO example you mentioned from the sources is just wild. Investing $1,000 back then and just
Holy
clawing on through all the volatility.
Yeah, just hold.
Worth over $2 million today, but most people would have sold, right? The first big dip, the short-term pain feels too real. They optimize for feeling okay today.
And this points to the underlying question shift for this pattern. Instead of asking, what decision feels best right now? The question becomes, what decision will my future self, say 10 or 20 years from now, be happiest with? It's about aligning today's choices with that longer view.
Wow. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Pattern 3. Approaching risk strategically, not just emotionally.
Yeah, this is another big one. Average thinking often sees risk as very black and white. It's either safe or it's risky. And risky means either avoid it completely or sometimes treat it like a total gamble based on gut feeling.
Leads to either doing nothing or doing something reckless.
Exactly. Paralysis or poor bets. But millionaires, according to these sources, see risk differently. They understand it exists on a spectrum. It's not just a feeling, it's something you can actually calculate, analyze, break down. They focus on understanding the expected value of a decision.
Expected value. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Think of it like this. If a choice has several possible outcomes, and each outcome has a certain probability, the expected value is basically the average result you'd get if you made that same choice many, many times. It's the potential gain times its probability minus the potential loss times its probability. It's doing the math, basically, even if it's just back of the envelope.
Okay, got it.
And this allows them to take calculated risks that might seem terrifying to others. Because they've done the calculation and understand the potential upside, even if unlikely, might justify the risk over the long run.
The Elon Musk example with SpaceX fits perfectly here. You mentioned he thought there was maybe only a 10% chance of success initially.
Right, something like that.
To most people, 90% chance of failure means don't do it. Too risky. But the potential upside revolutionizing space travel was so huge.
Exactly. The potential reward was massive. So even with low odds, the expected value calculation came out positive. He saw the math where others just saw the risk.
So it boils down to asking a couple of key questions about risk.
Yeah, fundamentally two things. What's the absolute worst case scenario here, and can I actually survive it or recover? And just as important, what's the potential upside if this goes right? They weigh both logically.
That's a useful framework for almost any big decision, really. Okay, pattern number 4, spending based on value, not status or emotion. This tackles that whole frugal millionaire idea.
Right. And the sources suggest it's not that millionaires are necessarily just cheap. They spend money, sometimes lots of it. But they use a totally different framework for deciding where that money goes. The average question is often just, can I afford this?
Meaning, do I have the cash or the credit line right now?
Yeah, it's about immediate capacity. Whereas the millionaire question is more like, is this worth the value exchange? What am I actually getting back for this money beyond just the temporary buzz of buying something or maybe impressing someone?
So that explains why you might see someone quite wealthy driving a modest car, maybe living in a normal house.
But they might own significant real estate investments or spend a lot on experiences that really enrich their life or tools that boost their productivity. They cut costs ruthlessly on stuff they don't value, but they'll spend generously on things that deliver real lasting utility or growth.
It's not about not spending, it's about being deliberate. Spending based on a value assessment, not just impulse.
Absolutely. That book, The Millionaire Next Door, which comes up in the sources, famously showed this. Many millionaires live well below their means. They prioritize putting money into assets, things that appreciate or generate income, rather than just consumption that signals status.
Right.
So the key spending questions become, will this purchase bring me lasting value? Or is it just momentary satisfaction and maybe even digging deeper? Am I buying this for my own genuine fulfillment, or am I trying to get external validation?
Ooh, that internal versus external thing is huge when it comes to spending. Okay, 5th and final pattern, treating knowledge as their highest return investment.
Yeah, and this one might be easy to overlook. Average thinking often compartmentalizes education. You go to school, maybe college, get some job training.
Yeah.
That's it. Learning is sort of done.
Right, check a box.
But the millionaire mindset sees learning completely differently. It's continuous. It's lifelong. It's not a task to finish. It's a competitive advantage that actually compounds over time, just like invested money.
So it generates returns, just like financial capital.
Absolutely. The sources mention things like the average millionaire reading, what, 2, 3 books a month. They actively seek out mentors. They invest in high-level courses, coaching. They're constantly studying markets, industries, new ideas. And crucially, when things go wrong, successful entrepreneurs see failure not as the end, but as, well, expensive tuition, a learning opportunity.
That Charlie Munger quote really sticks out Buffett's partner, saying their success came largely from being learning machines, building this lattice work of mental models over decades by constantly absorbing knowledge.
It drives their whole approach. The key questions become, what don't I know right now that could change everything? And how can I squeeze the maximum learning out of this challenge or this setback? It's this active, hungry pursuit of understanding.
Okay, so let's quickly recap those 5 core thought patterns we've pulled from the sources. First, that shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking.
Right. Then adopting that long-term perspective, thinking in decades, not days.
Third, approaching risk strategically, calculating expected value, not just reacting emotionally.
Fourth, making spending decisions based on real value and internal fulfillment, not status or fleeting feelings.
And finally, number 5, that continuous learning attitude, treating knowledge as a top-tier investment.
Exactly. And the really powerful message running through all this material, the little call to action, if you like, is that these aren't some exclusive traits you're just born with.
Right, they're skills.
They're mental models, tools, really. And they're available to anyone who's willing to consciously practice them, to build them into their own way of thinking over time.
So wealth creation really does seem to start, fundamentally, not in the bank account, but up here in the mind, shaped by these ways of thinking.
It truly does. So maybe something for you listening to think about this week. As you reflect on these 5 patterns, abundance, long-term view, calculated risk, value spending, continuous learning, which one do you feel has the biggest influence on your own financial thinking right now? And maybe what's just one small, concrete step you could take this week to start intentionally shifting your mindset just a little bit in that area?